Well, good morning. My name is Justin, and I'm one of the two student ministers we have here. I get to work alongside my buddy Marcus. I'm excited to be with you today. But before we dive in, I just want to give you a quick update on Pastor Matt. He's actually out of town this weekend visiting his oldest son, Drew, in Arizona. And Drew and his wife just welcomed in their very first child. And yeah, absolutely. Matt is headed out there to celebrate this new blessing and to give the parents some much needed rest as they settle into the new life of a baby. And so I'm personally excited to hear what Matt's new grandparent name is gonna be. If you have suggestions, I'm sure he would love to hear them. I know personally Matt wants the baby to call him Matt, but I'm leaning towards something like, I don't know, like Peepaw. You know, I think that'd be just such a good one. But who are we kidding? You know, our preferences don't matter. It's whatever that baby wants to call Matt and Janice for sure. But over the last couple of weeks, I've got to sit with Matt and Sean, and we just thought about what the next 3 weeks after Easter are going to look like. And as we were sitting and talking, we asked questions like, what does our church need to hear right now? What is our church feeling right now? Like we have wars going on. We have political differences. We're on our phones more than ever. We don't know what's real and what's not real. We have financial struggles. We have health struggles. We have emotional struggles. There's a lot going on. And in light of this, we settled on three things that we are feeling. We feel tired, we feel divided, and we feel scared. And so we started talking through what this series could look like. What passages of scripture that we were going to use, how our sermons could flow well together. And as we were all talking, I started thinking, tired, divided, and scared. Divided. Divided makes sense for Sean. Like one of Sean's new roles on our staff is soul care for our staff members, and he does such a great job of that. One of the ways he pursues unity amongst our staff is his favorite time of day, lunch. Like, Sean doesn't just love food just because he really likes food. I think he really does love having our staff sit around a table together and just have our team in unity. And I'm convinced that Sean will do almost anything to pursue unity amongst others. Anything except listen to country music. That's kind of a deal breaker for him, and I don't understand it, but honestly, it proves to me that Sean isn't perfect. He has at least one flaw, and that's he doesn't like country music. So then I start talking scared. For me, that has to be Matt. Matt might be the most grounded follower of Jesus that I know. Like really, I will get so fixated on something going on in the world. Like I'll watch videos and I'll read articles and I'll work myself up so much. And then I'll walk into Matt's office, as I often do. And in my mind, the scenario goes something like this. Matt, did you see what happened? Did you hear what they said? Can you believe that this is happening? What are we gonna do about this? To which he responds with something like, I did hear that. I did see that. Jesus is still in charge. Chill out, buddy. Now, he typically does this in a more sophisticated and pastoral way, but he constantly reminds me of who sits on the throne, and I'm thankful for that. So that leaves me with tired. My first reaction to that was, what? I have to preach a sermon on being tired? I don't know if I can. I'm literally tired right now. Like any young parents in the room, like young parents get it. Like you don't sleep anymore. Like sometimes you will fall asleep and it's so peaceful. And then you hear that soft sound and you slowly open your eyes in the middle of the night and bam, your child is standing there with like all bedhead and everything looking all scary and you're not going back to sleep. I love that saying that we parents sleep lightly so our children can sleep deeply. I'm tired. I'm sure you are too. I wasn't sure if I was able to preach, and honestly, I wasn't sure if I wanted to. Like I often make those jokes. Like I can sleep when I'm dead, or sleep is for the weak. And if I'm being honest, I've kind of created this desire for being tired. Because if I was tired, then I knew I was getting stuff done. And so in my mind, the feeling of tired equaled this feeling of accomplishment, which equaled purpose. In a lot of ways, my purpose was tied to feeling tired. And that's not what God wants for me. And that's not what he wants for you. In fact, we actually worship a God of rest. When you open up the scriptures and you start reading, you quickly see that God values rest. On the seventh day, God rested from all the work of creating. God himself rested. The one being that doesn't need to rest chose to rest. And we are created in God's image. And we are like God in our desire for rest, but we are unlike God in our need for rest. And so what God has revealed to me over the last several years, and what he has gracefully reminded me of over the last several weeks, is that when I am tired and when you are tired, God invites us to trust in him daily and rest in him deeply. And so we're going to spend some time in the book of Exodus. And so if you have your Bible, you can follow along. We're going to look at the story of Moses and his people immediately after God delivered them from Egypt. We're in chapter 16, but 2 chapters before that, in chapter 14, is where we see that iconic story of God using Moses to part the Red Sea, to send his people through, crashing down on the Egyptian army, chasing them, freeing the Israelite people. And there's this huge celebration for God delivering his people. In fact, chapter 15 is a book, an entire chapter devoted to singing praises to God. It's titled The Song of Moses and Miriam. Chapter 16, the very next chapter after this worship to God, is where we pick up. Just about a month or so after being freed from slavery. Let's see what God's people are up to. In verse 2, it says this of chapter 16. It says, in the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. That didn't take long. The Israelites said to them, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat, and we ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into the desert to starve this entire assembly to death. Kind of dramatic. The Israelites start complaining shortly after being delivered from Egypt. And tired people often romanticize the past. Send us back into slavery. It was so much better than what we have now. And isn't it funny how we don't remember the things we should, but we do remember the things that we shouldn't? Hey, one of the most clear ways that I can picture in my simple mind this mystery of memory is with Morgan. I got her permission. I saw this exact situation play out 3 different times. Okay, a couple years after being married, Morgan becomes pregnant with our firstborn, Macy. And pregnancy is rough on the man and the woman. All right, let's just, give the guy some credit here. Mostly the woman, though, mostly the woman. But I would hear, I'm in trouble. I would hear a couple things during that time from Morgan. She would say things like, I'm miserable. This is terrible. Never again. Or my personal favorite, Justin, why did you do this to me? But she makes it through the pregnancy, delivers the baby, and it's always about that 6 to 8 month mark where I hear something like, we could do this again. Like what? You don't remember all the things you said to me that you said to yourself? But sure enough, she would get pregnant with JB and the same thing. I'm miserable. This is terrible. Never again. Justin, why did you do this to me? 6 to 8 months later, we could do this again. And it happened with Macy, it happened with JB, and it happened with Tate. What changed? Make it make sense. Well, nothing changed except time and perspective. Of course, going back to Egypt wasn't better than their current situation. Not even close. But they were tired. And tired people forget. Tired people forget how God showed up for them. Tired people forget what God brought them through. And I'm thankful that God never changes, but our perspective surely does. They were just tired. They were tired of uncertainty. They were tired of hunger. They were tired of trusting. And the question I'm going to ask you today, multiple times throughout the day, is this: are you tired? Are you tired of uncertainty? Are you tired of what you're seeing on the news? Are you tired of just being tired? Maybe tired of wandering in the wilderness of exhaustion. The Israelites were tired, and they forgot about God's mercies. They forgot about God's faithfulness, but God doesn't respond with immediate judgment. He actually responds with provision. In verse 4 of chapter 16 through verse 9 says this: Then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way, I will test them and see whether they will follow my instruction. On the sixth day, they are to gather what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days. So in verse 6, so Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, in the evening, you will know that it was the Lord that brought you out of Egypt, and in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we that you should grumble against us? Moses also said, you will know that it was the Lord when he gives you meat to eat in the evening and all the bread you want in the morning, because he has heard your grumbling against them. Again, who are we? You're not grumbling against us, but you're grumbling against the Lord. And lastly, verse 9, Moses told Aaron, say to the entire Israelite community, come before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling. And what I love about this is that God, in God's grace and kindness, he doesn't just snap his fingers and erase these complainers from history, which he could have done very easily. No, he provides for them. And what does he provide? It says bread from heaven, or later in this chapter referred to as manna. But what is manna? And this is so interesting. In Exodus 16 here, it's described as wafers made with honey. But later on in the book of Numbers, it's described as tasting like a pastry cooked with the finest oils. Wafers made with honey, a pastry cooked with the finest oils. That sounds a lot like a donut. Like, only God could make a donut manna. You know, God provided donuts as daily provision. I got to put this disclaimer here. The donuts we provide in the lobby are not manna from heaven, all right? They may look like it and they may taste like it, but they will have a much different effect on you than manna from heaven does. That is not manna. We'll get a message later that our donut sales have tripled today. What we see here is God provide for his people. But he also does something, he sets limits to what they could gather. We see it here in the text we just read, and we see it a little further on in the chapter. Why does he do this? Like, why not just let the Israelites work all day and all night, 7 days a week, gathering as much manna as they can? Because it was never about the manna. It was about a daily dependence on God. The idea of trusting God just one day at a time. Because what we see here is God provides sufficiently, but not excessively. And he provides daily, but not all at once. And it's true that oftentimes when I've found myself most tired are the times that I've lost trust in God's daily provision. Lost trust in his daily grace, in his daily bread. And the second reason I think he sets limits to this is because he was retraining their souls. In verse 13, it says this. It said, that evening, quail came and covered the camp. And in the morning, there was a layer of dew around the camp. And when the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. When the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, what is it? For they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, it's the bread the Lord has given you to eat, and this is what the Lord has commanded. Everyone is to gather as much as they need. Take an omer, a couple pounds for each person you have in your tent. So in verse 70, it says the Israelites did as they were told. Some gathered much and some little. And when they measured it by the omer, this is interesting, the one who gathered much did not have too much, and the one who gathered little did not have too little. Everyone had gathered just as much as they needed. Then Moses said to them, no one is to keep any of it until morning. However, some of them paid no attention to Moses. They kept part of it until morning. But it was full of maggots and began to smell, so Moses was angry with them. The last couple of verses here. Each morning, everyone gathered as much as they needed. And when the sun grew hot, it melted away. On the sixth day, they gathered twice as much, 2 omers for each person. And the leaders of the community came and reported this to Moses. And he said this to them. This is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is to be the day of Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Sabbath. To cease, to stop, to rest. And in Genesis 2, in the creation story, God modeled rest for us. But in Exodus here, God teaches his people to live it out. And let's be honest and 100% clear. We need Sabbath now more than ever. The Sabbath was a gift to the Israelite people. Like, they didn't get a day off in Egypt. They were slaves. They worked all day and received very little for the amount of time they did put in. The people in charge didn't value them, nor did they care about who was doing the work. And sure, the work they did had some value, but what purpose was it serving? Like, sound familiar? Pharaoh is alive and well today. Really, we work more than ever. Recent studies show that Americans work 137 hours more a year than the Japanese, 260 hours more a year than the British, and over 500 more hours a year than the French. We take less vacations than most every other culture. We have a cultural emphasis on work and productivity, and we're one of the only countries that experience something called vacation guilt. Here's a true statement. In the modern Western world, Americans consistently work longer hours, take less rest, and they feel more pressure to stay productive than any other developed nation. Marcus and I, we see this with our students. We've seen a rapid shift in sports culture and extracurricular activity culture in the last 15 years. Sundays used to be protected. Even Wednesday nights were protected. But now we have tournaments on Sundays and late practices on Wednesday, and we've bought into this idea that it's okay to choose what I'm doing after school over what I'm to do at church. And it's Egypt all over again. We're still in bondage, but this time it's by our own choices. And Sabbath is a way of saying no to Pharaoh. Enough work. Enough addiction to accomplishment, addiction to accumulation. You don't have to have your kids in sports all year. You don't have to have flatter abs. You don't need everything you want. Enough. As John Mark Comer says, Sabbath is a way of saying no to Pharaoh and yes to Jesus. So I ask you again, do you feel tired? Like not just tired, because if you're tired, you can take a nap, right? Like you feel completely depleted. You're exhausted, you're on the edge of burnout, barely hanging in there, and you just want rest? Me too. Matthew chapter 11, verse 28 says this. It says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and I am humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." It's an invitation to come to Jesus when you are weary, to come to Jesus when you are broken, to come to Jesus when you have tried everything you can, to come to Jesus when you have prayed and you have prayed and you have prayed and you're praying for a miracle, to come to Jesus when you have done everything you can to get your child on the right track, to come to Jesus when you have tried everything you can to make that relationship work, to come to Jesus when you have worked and you have worked and you have worked and you still can't seem to make ends meet in our financial climate. Not an invitation to have all the answers, an invitation to come to Jesus and rest. There's a moment where I felt the heaviness of exhaustion, but also in the same moment, I felt the comfort that Jesus talks about, that rest Jesus talks about. It was a normal day, and by now, my wife and I, we were we're on the good side of the cancer journey. She'd already been cured, and we were a couple months after that, and we were just monitoring how her body was responding to medicines, and that was our life. And it was one evening, we got a phone call from the doctor, and the first thing the doctor told Morgan was, you need to go to the ER right now. Your blood results came back, and something's off, something's not right. We need to get you checked out right now. So we got the kids situated. We got in the car. We looked at the results, and sure enough, things looked weird. And from what we could find online, there was a couple possibilities. One, it could have just been a reaction to the medicine she was on. Best case scenario. Two, it could be a sign that the cancer came back. Or three, it could have pointed to a new disease that was developing, most likely leukemia. And so as you can imagine, we drove to the hospital in complete silence. I couldn't believe it. We were so tired. Tired that Morgan had to fight this battle still. Tired that the kids had to endure this still. Tired that I couldn't do anything about it. So we park at the hospital. I walk around the car. I open the door for her, and she immediately hugs me. And she's crying, and she's releasing all these fears to me. Tell the kids I love them. Make sure that they know how proud of them I am. Make sure they know that I think you're such a great husband and a father. And it sounded a lot like she was saying goodbye. Like she was so tired. And so I closed my eyes. And oftentimes I don't know what to say or what to do, and this was one of those moments. I remember just thinking, Jesus, I just come to you. I don't know what to say, what to do, but we're coming to you. And I said, can you give us rest? We spent a week in the hospital, and in a way, I was forced to Sabbath, because when you're in the hospital all cooped up, there's only so much you can do. And so I leaned into Jesus, and turns out, he gave us rest. It was just a reaction. Her blood results were just a reaction to the medicine she was on, which was our best case scenario. So we stayed in the hospital for 6 or 7 days just to monitor things. And what I didn't expect was for this surprise visit to the hospital to be the motivation I needed to prioritize rest. So what do you need when you are wandering in the wilderness of exhaustion? It's true, I don't know how tired each of you are in this room, but I can say this, that if you are tired, doing one of these things will be helpful, because they were for me. The first thing, and I like to start out easy, I don't like to jump into the deep end. The first one's easy. Some of us need to just rest our body, to sleep. I know, just another person telling me that I don't sleep enough, right? And I get it, like how silly is sleep? Like we were created to be vulnerable to predators for a third of our life? That doesn't make sense to me. And I don't need to sit here and convince you of how important rest is. I think we know. Healthy rest benefits almost every physiological process in the life, and the lack of rest hurts the same areas. Sleep consolidates memories, it restores hormonal balances, it resets our immune system, and so on and so on. Sleep is good for you. Get some sleep. Take a nap. Sometimes the most spiritual thing we can do is sleep. Secondly, we need to depend on Jesus daily. In John chapter 6, verse 35, it says, I am the bread of life, and whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. And for some of us, it just might be time to make daily time with Jesus a priority, to pursue that daily connection with Jesus, to spend time with the Father. Stop trying to solve all the world's problems. Daily time with Jesus, and God will give you what you need for today. And lastly, it might be time to actually practice Sabbath. Practice Sabbath even if it's not perfect. Yeah, shoot for a day dedicated to spending time with Jesus. No work, no honey-do list, no work, no striving, just spending time with God. And if a day's too intimidating, look, I get it. Shoot for a couple hours. No guilt. In fact, Jesus never commanded us to practice Sabbath, but he sure did practice it himself. And Jesus' emphasis on the Sabbath pointed to a deeper meaning, a deeper principle that true rest comes through Jesus, to just be with Jesus. So in preparation for this message, not feeling like I was the right person for this, I decided to take advantage of something new offered to our staff. We're able to utilize something called a soul care day a couple times a year. This isn't a vacation day. This isn't a day off. This is an intentional day just to spend the entire time with Jesus. No lists, no work, just Jesus. I had not used one of these yet, because I was too tired or too busy. And so I decided to do that. Now, these days are gonna look different from person to person. For example, I was exhausted mentally, and so I chose to do something with my hands, following that wisdom of if you work with your hands, you Sabbath with your mind. If you work with your mind, you Sabbath with your hands. So I decided to go golfing. And as Sean says, what better place to meet Jesus than on holy ground? There we go. That's for you. And plus, I'm not at the level of golf skill where I get upset if I don't play well. I actually enjoy being out there, and so it was just me and Jesus on a golf course. And so I had plans of things I was gonna do, passages of scripture that I wanted to read, prayers that I wanted to pray, things that I just wanted to talk to Jesus about and never had time because I'm too busy. And so I had plans for a good Sabbath, but Jesus gave me rest. I get to the shop, I pay for the round, load up the clubs, and I head to the first hole. And what did I see? Not one golf cart in front of me, not two golf carts in front of me, but 7 different golf carts lined up to play golf. I thought I needed time with God, but boy, did God know that I needed even more than I thought. And so, just perspective for you, it usually takes me 2 to 3 hours to play 18 holes of golf. I'm not very good. But this day, it took me 4 hours and some change just to play through 10 holes of golf. I hear you loud and clear, God. Now, let's be honest. On a normal day, this would have frustrated me. It made me so angry. And chances are, I probably would have just went home from the start. But I wasn't rushed. I was patiently waiting to Sabbath with Jesus. And I found rest. Now, this is coming from someone who has known Jesus for a while now and needed rest. Well, what if you're in this room and you don't know Jesus? Like you feel tired and you feel divided and you feel scared just like us, but you don't know Jesus. That's probably incredibly difficult. And I would say it might be time for you to come to Jesus for the first time. It's time to come to Jesus and receive that rest I keep talking about. Because we weren't created to carry this alone, and God did not design us to walk this path alone. And so when we close service, everyone's gonna be exiting different parts of the room. Would you just walk this way up to the cross? And would you approach one of our staff or elders and just say, I wanna know Jesus. We'd love to walk with you through that conversation and what that looks like, and maybe be a small part in helping you find that rest that Jesus offers. So lastly, one more time, are you tired? Like, are you tired? That's okay. I am too. Jesus invites us to rest your body, to depend on him daily, and to practice Sabbath with Jesus. Jesus invites you to trust him daily and rest in him deeply. But whatever your next step is, would you come to Jesus and allow him to give you true rest? Amen?